We're just working at getting the live stream up, and we're not sure that everybody has cleared the lobby.
The lobby is clear.
The lobby is clear.
I just was told 7 seconds. Oh, you don't want to know that?
Oh, just wondering where your son is.
Oh, I don't know where your son is. Do you want me to text
We
him?
know he's not in the lobby.
That's okay.
He might be in an elevator.
Does that help?
It's all good.
That's okay.
So we can start.
Yeah, we can wait though.
Another round.
Yeah.
Another round.
Yeah.
You'll be looped before the program then, Margaret. Another round, she says.
Yeah. You don't have any.
I'm just,
Good afternoon. And welcome to the celebration of the well-lived life of Donald Patrick Gannon. He was a father, grandfather, great-grandfather, brother, uncle, cousin, and friend. We welcome all those who are here in person and those who are viewing the live stream from their own homes across the globe. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katrina Younger, and I am Donald's baby sister and your MC for today. Before we begin, I'd like to ask all members of Don's immediate and extended family to please stand.
What are we doing?
You may be seated now. I am sure he is very proud that his legacy will continue within each of you as long as you continue to share his stories. Thanks for coming and for sharing today, either at the mic or in the tables or around the room. We have a few people scheduled to speak today, and after that, those who would like to share a memory or a funny story will be invited to come forward. We will finish the formal program with a brief song and a rousing and heartfelt toast to Don. Donald and I were both March babies. My mother once told me that Donald was thrilled that I arrived home from the hospital on his 7th birthday. What a great present, eh? Though Donald never shared that with me. I am not sure he was always thrilled, and there was a big question as to what these 3 brothers were going to do with a girl, and even requests, I am told, to return me for their anticipated baby brother. But I'm sticking to the story my mother shared. Our first tribute today will be shared by Don's youngest child and only son. See, we share that, Sean, baby of the family, Sean Gannon. Please help me welcome Sean.
Good luck, me. My dad was as tough as they come. He wasn't a brawler or a bully, nor was he aggressive or macho. He had true grit. He was the embodiment of resilience and unyielding determination. Early in his life, Dad had dreamed of becoming a pilot. While he was attending pilot school, he had his first epileptic seizure immediately upon landing his first plane, meaning that he could no longer realize this dream. Whenever we'd asked how he dealt with such a devastating turn of events, he would just shrug and say it just meant I had to do something else. He dealt with the loss of the love of his life, years of debilitating pain from shingles on his head and face, and he complained about none of it. As he started to lose mobility in his leg, he opted to take up golf. He said he needed to use it or lose it, and use it he did. He walked the course for many years, pushing himself and loving every minute of it. When he was diagnosed with melanoma and started having tumors removed with some regularity, he would just joke that we were burying him one piece at a time. When he was on oxygen and struggling with exhaustion, he had days where it was a huge struggle to even get out of bed. On these days, he would invariably push through, although it would take a tremendous effort just to get into his wheelchair. Once in his chair, he would sit there winded and catch his breath. We'd sit in silence for a few minutes, and after a while, I'd ask him how he was doing, and he'd reply, "Well, I woke up on the right side of the dirt today, so let's go get some lunch." Dad simply did not have it in him to be a victim. He approached each day as a special gift, a chance to revel in the simple joys of life. Dad had no interest in blame. He taught me early on not to focus on who made a mistake, only to understand how it was made in order to ensure that it didn't happen again. I was aghast after getting into my first car accident. I felt terrible. I was clearly shaken up and remorseful while telling him about what had happened, and he told me, just relax. It's called an accident for a reason. It's not called an on purpose. Accidents happen, and that's okay. I'm sure it helps that my sisters had long since desensitized my parents to the destruction of vehicles. Margaret having managed to remove the front end of our Topaz in an altercation with a Brinks truck, and Jennifer somehow managing to cause a similar amount of damage to an absolute tank of a Chevy Malibu in a parking lot against a stationary object in reverse. Dad was very handy. He was exceptionally confident that he could take on nearly any task, whether that be installing windows, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, leveling of sidewalks, you name it. That dude could do everything. I don't know how in the world he learned it all without YouTube. He helped me to understand the satisfaction of building things with my hands and creative problem solving. Watching him work had a profound impact on my understanding of just how capable a person could be. One time, Dad was making a full turkey dinner. I can't remember what the occasion was for this meal, but honestly, it could just have been a Wednesday. He did not need much excuse to fire up a full big meal. Dad asked me to put the potatoes in the pressure cooker and start boiling them, which I happily did. I was blissfully unaware of the fact that our pressure cooker's lid had been broken for many years and did not have a pressure release valve. It is unclear to me why we kept this improvised explosive device lying around the house, and why the instructions to use the pressure cooker wouldn't include a warning of the extreme danger it posed. These were questions for another day. So I did as I thought I was asked. I put the potatoes in the pressure cooker with some water, I sealed that lid on tight, I put it on high, and I retired to my bedroom to blast some Milli Vanilli. Somewhere between Girl You Know It's True and Blame It on the Rain, a tremendous crash thundered up the stairs, followed by screaming. Dad had found the potatoes. Now, I know many of us, given this circumstance, would weigh it a little bit and think about extreme horrific injury on one side and weigh that against wasting a batch of potatoes, but not Dad. Dad was an Irishman, and he needed those potatoes as much as they needed him. I have no idea how he would even manage to get the lid off, but as mentioned, he was very handy. So he pops the lid off this pressure cooker, and he's met with just an absolute superheated steam water, gorgeously cooked potatoes all over his head and chest. And so after a quick run to the hospital, he returned and finished the meal shirtless with the largest blister I've ever seen in my entire life hanging off of his chest. It was tremendous. It had heft to it. It was probably 500 milliliters. It was crazy. He had functionally grown a third boob. And I felt terrible. I felt responsible. I felt like if I had paid attention, I'd have known not to put the lid on, or if I wasn't so enthralled with the sweet sounds of synth pop, maybe I'd have been around to talk him into a more sane course of action. And Dad knew that I blamed myself. He sat me down and he stared me deep in the eyes, and he said, "Son, I want you to know that a man can never have enough boobs." He didn't say that. But I've played enough Cards Against Humanity with him to know that he loved a boob joke. And so there it is. That's for you, Pops. Dad was not just a father to me, he was my hero and my idol. He accepted everyone for who they were, and he wanted nothing other than for those around him to be happy, to have food in their belly and a drink in their glass. He knew that every person has value, that they all deserve dignity and respect, and he had zero patience for those that didn't share that ideal. If you wanted to get a rise out of that man, the only two surefire ways to do it were to express a bigoted belief or to refuse to accept for return rotten milk without a receipt. When Mom died, my wonderful friend Jason came by our house and he brought a nice bottle of scotch with him to share with Dad and the rest of us. A number of us were sitting around Dad's dining room table enjoying a dram, and Dad tried the whiskey, ruminated on it and sniffed it and declared that whiskey was aged in oak and burnt twice. And Jason checked the bottle, impressed, and he declared, "Dad, you are in fact right. How did you know that?" Jason asked him. Dad grinned impishly and with that familiar twinkle in his eye, gleefully told Jason that it was really quite simple. All scotch is aged in oak and burnt twice. Dad was supportive but never pushy. Whatever he could do to make your life better, he wanted to. He wanted what was best for his children and grandchildren, and he would move mountains to help them get what they needed. He would happily provide us with his guidance when it was asked for, but he understood deeply that each of us was going to need to find our own path wherever they may meander. He was a huge support to me when I returned to school in my 30s, which absolutely transformed my life. You couldn't ask for a better cheerleader or a support system. Helping Dad this last year was trying at times. His dementia had worsened. He was still with it, but he'd get confused and his memory was fading. He would get his oxygen tubes caught in his wheelchair and need help getting untangled. He and I started having video calls a number of times each day. I would call and check in on him, make sure his oxygen was flowing, and we'd have a quick chat. These calls were sometimes more difficult than others, especially if I was at the lake and couldn't just run over to help him out. We'd sometimes spend an hour plus working on getting his tubes untangled or getting his wheelchair plugged in and getting him into bed. And these calls felt very cooperative, like we were doing a puzzle together. We were very patient with each other. We joke around and have a good time while working through the issues. I'm so glad we took advantage of this time. Dad and I were closer at the time of his passing than we had ever been before. Why'd I put this line? We told each other often how proud we were of each other and how much we loved each other. It was a great honor to have had the opportunity to provide him with some support for a change. To honor Dad's memory, please embrace the lessons he taught us. Resilience, acceptance, and the importance of finding joy in the journey while we continue waking up on the right side of the dirt.
Thank you very much, Sean. I remember when your dad had another accident. Is anyone else talking about that one?
No.
Does that mean say more?
Oh, no, well, you might have been. I don't know, Sean. We didn't talk about that in those days. They had just brought Jennifer home from the hospital, and my mom and I were over there because we were very excited to see this new little baby, and we had a lovely pot of tea. Now, Dawn, are you telling that?
No.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Dawn had brewed the tea according to Irish standards, heating up the pot and making it a very nice hot pot of tea. He had also repaired this particular pot with glue not that long before. And when he brought it up to pour it, it was right over his lap when it gave way. He had, I'm sure, second or third degree burns in places you don't want to have burns. And we had to go every day and change the sheets, and he had to get his dressings changed for quite a while. So he is well aware of burn accidents. I would have thought he would have known about the pot later on, Sean. that maybe, since I told a different one. Now I'm going to welcome Don's elder daughter, Jennifer Mullins, to share her memory.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
A plus for grounding. Ditto.
Thank you very much, Auntie Trina. Closer? Thank you very much, Diane, for the advice. Right into the mic. Here I go. And welcome everyone here. It's so heartwarming for me to see all the love in this room, all the friends, all the family. And I really appreciate, too, about the live stream. Thank you so much, Mike. That means that so many of my friends in Nanaimo can join us today. My name is Jen. I'm 53. Not an alcoholic. I've got other problems, not that one. I'm here with my husband, Jamie. Jamie, can you stand up, say hello? My daughter, Gwen, here. She's 20. Oliver, my beautiful son. He's 17. Stephanie, my gorgeous daughter, is 15. And Catherine, she's 11. Catherine will turn 12 on March the 21st, just 2 days after my dad would have turned 80. They shared a very sort of special birthday type connection. That's because you started labor on his birthday. Thank you, Margaret. You've got memory of things I don't remember. It's really awesome.
It was a strong 55 hours.
Yeah, we've been in Nanaimo for the last 11 years. Gwen was 10 when we moved, and it was a really exciting time to move, but also it was so painful to leave all of our beautiful friends and family. But my dad made our move so much easier. He came, he drove out to Nanaimo like it was no big deal, and helped us move on into our first house there, and it was just so fantastic. I've had lots of visits with my dad since he's moved here to Fred Douglas Place. He and I moved at around the same time. And those visits were so special. Just, I'd end up having visits not with my whole family sometimes, but just me or one of my kids, and it would just be a nice quiet time with us. We'd visit and relax. We'd sort of meet his own pace and walk the walkways and explore. I'd cook for him, and he'd eat these enormous plates of food. I started having a contest with myself. How much could I fit on a plate? And Dad would eat it all. And around the third day, he said, I think I have to slow down. But I'd like to try a little bit of an experiment with you. One of the dreams I had, fantasies I had about today, is that I'd hear a buzz about everybody talking about my dad kind of all at once. So what I'd like to try with you, if you're willing, is we could each turn to a neighbor and talk for just a minute about things we knew about my dad, or what brought you here, or what you love about celebrations of life, any kind of thing you want to talk about, and then we can switch. So if you're willing to do that, you can tell the stories and I'll watch the time. Go. that's a beautiful buzz. That's about a minute. Do you want to switch?
We were talking back and forth for a second.
That's fine. You have 1 more minute.
Yeah, I like it. I wasn't saying you're the only one.
Thank you very much for playing along with my little experiment. I really appreciate the openness. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about this visit that I'm on here right now. I didn't really expect to need a black dress. I came here after many delays in flights to just be with my dad, to just have one last kind of mini vacation with my dad, to help him move to an assisted living place. We spent the time going through all of his slides. My goodness, he was such a photographer, and all those slides. At first, he said, let's do Uncle Jim's approach and just keep all the faces. I love Uncle Jim's approach. He's so determined. And as we went through them, I said, can we get rid of this one? Oh, no, we were in this trip, in the Black Hills, and that's the scenery, that reminds me. And what about this one, this beautiful little flower? Isn't it pretty? You want to say that one? So he had so many stories that he was sharing about all these experiences of his life and all this reminiscing, and it was just such a special time for us. And then I started to notice how much congestion he had, and we made an appointment to go to the doctor. So on Monday we went to the doctor, and the doctor, we don't do this in BC, we can only bring 3 topics, but she went through every one of them. And she spent 40 minutes with us as we talked about toe fungus and glaucoma and every other little insignificant thing. But when we got to the congestion, she got really worried and said, you need an x-ray. We had an x-ray on Tuesday. And on Tuesday, Margaret and Sean came over and we were talking about his move, and he was just vibrating with joy. He just had this feeling that things were all together, and then almost like it was so much that he reached for the scotch. He was just so much excited. And then on the Wednesday, we got a call from the cancer doctor and heard about how he'd had a few more tumors now. Tumors in his lungs, tumors in his abdomen. And they were not that concerned with those. Maybe we should do an MRI to see what's going on in the brain and neck. So I just accepted that as information. We're just going to continue on. But later we had another appointment with the same doctor that we rolled over and saw in Eaton Place or City Square. And she spent another hour with us there, so concerned about his oxygen level. He just couldn't get the saturation without an enormous flow through his nose, and his nose was becoming quite painful. And she arranged for him to have an aortic scan she was very concerned about his heart, and put him on water pills because she saw in the x-ray it was the right lung that had the nodes, and the left lung didn't have the cancer, but it was filling with water. And I went to the pharmacy and they said, well, you can't start those pills tonight, you'll just pee all night long. So we had them all set out for the morning. And we changed the mask that he was wearing, so it wasn't going to go directly up his nose anymore. It was his face mask. But he wasn't really that comfortable with that mask. But he said, it's okay, let's try it. We can just try it for a while, and that's how you get used to things. And then he had this big smile, and I kissed him goodnight. And then overnight, I started hearing his radio playing. And so then I was like, well, he always plays the radio at night. That just goes on. And I started thinking about the Prairie Theater tickets that we could get for Sunday and go see the Prairie Theater. And I started thinking, we're doing all these doctor's appointments. How boring. All these things are available to us here in the walkway. And at the arena, there was the Monster Jam truck show coming up. And I thought, oh my God, he might not enjoy going, but he sure would enjoy thinking of going. So I went in to just go peek on him, just to tell him about these things, and he was already gone. He was already gone. He broke my plans. Didn't hear my jokes. And then I called Sean and I called Margaret, and they came over. And then Sean wrote an email to everybody we know, come, give us hugs. And then the apartment was full of people, beautiful people, comforting us and being with us. And there's no place I'd rather be. I'm so pleased that it happened this way, that my dad maybe felt a bit of comfort having me around, and he wasn't getting us trapped in his oxygen tubes, Sean. He would get trapped and then he'd get untrapped. It wasn't a big deal. He spilled a cup of coffee on the floor. That wasn't a big deal, like reaching over. He even filled the dishwasher the right way the night before he died. I remember as a teen being so impatient with that. They all get clean when they're further apart, but in the morning I opened the dishwasher and there was my dad, and he's been everywhere ever since. Going through all those photographs and putting together all these little documents and things has been so healing for me, to review all these memories and share them and talk about them. It's been really, really a special time. But I also just want to share with you the greatest gifts that my dad gave me, that my mom and dad gave me, and that is my brother and my sister. I'm just so lucky to have the little bit of people skills I do, thanks to Margaret and Sean. And he was such a demonstration of close relationships, the way that mom and dad always wanted to keep the family together, and having opportunities to meet with the cousins and on the regular all the time. It got to be so much, but it's amazing. And like Sean said, the endless support. But also, he really gave me a gift of forgiveness. There was never any talk about anything that I ever did, and I did a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't be living with them, that maybe I should be apart, that maybe I don't belong. It was just another conversation. They were loud conversations, but another conversation. Thank you very much.
She's taller than I am. Now, when Jennifer did that memory exercise about sharing memories, the family requests that you add not only your names to the guest book pages, which are back there somewhere,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, they're on the memory table.
On the memory table, okay. But also please share your memories, stories, and wishes. And as well, right there, you also have another basket with these lovely shredded pieces of paper.
Yep.
Those are special because those are going to be sent
Talk
up,
into the microphone.
sent up to heaven, sent up to Dawn in a ceremonial fire later. So you can put whatever you want on there and place it in the
Crystal vase.
crystal vase. Thank you. All right. I'm only 2 stories behind, but I don't want to take up too much time here. All right. Don enjoyed the community here at Fred Douglass Place from the time that he moved in 2019. He made many friends here and had a new lease on life after moving from his 2-story home to a more accessible 1-level apartment. Would the people of Fred Douglass Place please stand or raise your hand? We are all so grateful for the love and support you showed to Don. The Supper Club group, led by Wilf, formed a critical bubble of connection, especially during COVID lockdown. Wilf, we especially appreciated your wellness checks, just casually popping in to see that Don was okay. Even when we were on our sibling calls on Tuesday, we could see Wilf pop in, have a little wave, say hi, and then leave. And we knew that Don was in good hands when we weren't on a call. It did make his day. Thank you very much to all Fred Douglass Place residents and friends. I'm going to go back because I like this story. Another memory I have of Donald, my memories are of long ago, so generally not overlapping with the kids, is how he played the tuba in the Tech Voc band. He took the bus everywhere with that tuba, to and from school and anywhere else he felt that someone would want to hear a tuba. He always had the tuba in its own seat beside him. I'm sure people loved it when he was traveling at rush hour. We lived in an apartment on Hugo Street at that time, and he practiced every day. I'm not sure how the other residents felt, but I do know that one time the fire alarm went off in our building and none of us woke up. And I think it's because he was always playing that darn tuba. I recall my dad shot a home movie of Don playing his tuba and me dancing the twist to his music. Don also marched in the Santa Claus parade, playing the tuba and looking so sharp in his green and gold uniform. We were all excited to see him parade by. In the last year, he was happily surprised that our granddaughter Jameson is also a tuba player in her school band. Right. I'd like to welcome Margaret Gannon, Dawn's younger daughter, to come and share her memories. She'll probably put the mic up too because everybody's tall. Come on, Margaret.
I'm pretty sure we were the same height when I was 9.
You're short at 9.
That's true. It was probably more like 15. I'm also really touched by the amount of love in this room, and I couldn't thank any one of you more for being here. Thank you so much. It means a lot. My phone's not ready, and I'm clearly not as tall as I think. Dad. He taught me how to love, how to protect people, how to hold space for varying and unpopular ideas, flip sides, and debates. He taught me to listen, to hear, to provide support to those we care for and for those who cannot care for themselves. To dream big, to make big plans, to build a strategy and see it through. He taught me how to build stuff. how to negotiate for what is right, how to navigate people and maps. I don't think we all necessarily were super good at people all the time. It's a learning game.
You're here.
He taught me how to read a map and how to set up a shelter and make camp. He taught me how to make fire. He taught me how to find cold drinking water and pack a vehicle. Tetris style. Because you just can't have enough stuff, and I have never been able to pack light. He taught me how to walk on the sunny side of the street and cheer for the underdog, how to look ahead, whether driving, which I had to practice a few times, or in life, how to spot the danger, but then jump in, eyes wide open, to challenge ourselves, to trust myself, to know we can change course when we find ourselves in awful circumstances, to try something new for no other reason than we can, to try anyway, and to find the humor in our lives, in the triumphs and the challenges, and to find great joy in our own discoveries and in others' good fortunes, in everyone's happinesses, and to offer help, to be present, and to choose our own paths. He taught us how to light up a plum pudding. My mom, I believe, like, it was always in the summertime when she was making those, and she would have these huge bowls of like dried fruit and breadcrumbs and suet. I won't tell you what that is because you'd never eat it. But she would pull all these things together. They'd be sitting for days. She'd pack them into bowls. She'd be boiling them and steaming them and doing all the things she does, the jam a Guinness in there and lay it to rest with a big shot of whiskey. Then she put them in a cabinet for like forever. From time to time, she'd open them up and give them a drink, which means more booze. At Christmas, she'd boil that thing up and flip it over on a platter and give my dad a jug of brandy. The fires were epic. Sometimes they lunched onto the table. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do. It was very, very brilliant, very, very awesome. And for all the new people, I'd be like, you want a piece of cake? It's kind of like a shot in a cake. Always a fun time. Always, like, just the massive amounts of people who we would get together with, whether it would be for Christmas or birthdays or Easter or really just because we have a yard. Like, it was just like, it was amazing, the amount of people that we got to spend tons and tons of time with. He's encouraging, he's fun-loving, he's quick to chuckle at himself and with others. He's curious and sassy and witty and silly and endearing and thoughtful. He was always learning new tricks, from carpentry to electrical to building plans and decks and cabin additions and leveling docks and cribs. Always he helped just add a second story onto my uncle's home. He was painting and he was backing up trailers into tight spaces and generally helping everyone. He slowly traded some of those big plans and ideas for downsizing. We downsized him and helped him downsize out of the house and the garage and the carport and the hot tub and the big backyard. He really enjoyed that hot tub. I don't think he got in it one time. But the idea that people would come over, some people would just get changed outside. Little did you know, he was probably sitting in the dining room window. But the amount of people who came to enjoy that hot tub and come in and share stories, and he was always ready for anything. Hey, Dad, do you wanna? Yes. Yes, let's go. Downtown. He came to Fred Douglas and met like a whole other wonderful group of friends. He learned how to ride a wheelchair. I mean, he learned hard inside his apartment. That's damage deposit. He eventually traded his cigars and his cigarettes for puffing on inhalers and playing with oxygen hoses. But he never lost faith that every day was pretty darn great. He had a crazy map already in his head of all of the Winnipeg skywalks, although I feel now that maybe we can thank Jen for that, although we've been on a fair amount of exploring places as well. When we found the indoor liquor store, boom! That was a good day. He's a man who can toe the long game. He found himself with an opportunity to take the wood slats from the walls of our elementary school, walls that decorated what used to be the altar, although there was now the gymnasium. It was clad in varying shapes of wall boards. They had been varnished so many times they appeared to be plastic. The contractor was going to toss them, but he collected them, and he began the tedious, long process of reclaiming the oak. He was painting on stripper and waiting, painting on stripper and waiting, scraping, sanding, and eventually paying for them to be professionally dipped. So many years of varnish. But underneath was finally revealed what beautiful, smooth, grained oak slats. They showed themselves. Their beauty had been hidden to everybody but him. But he saw through all of that varnish, and then he used them to cover our rec room walls. Long game, seeing the beauty under all the layers of protection, giving new life to discarded value. That was years of work, but it certainly paid off. Inasmuch as he loved company, he was also fiercely independent. He took down a huge branch in our backyard by himself, chainsawing the tree while balancing on the fence and a ladder. The tree branch twisted as it fell, taking him with it. He was yelling from the backyard. He wasn't really entirely pinned, but he certainly wasn't free. My mom was like pulling on this crazy huge branch, trying to get him out from underneath it. So, you know, a trip to the hospital and a few broken ribs later, like
Still had dinner.
the backyard, probably still had dinner. This is long before slow cookers. It was beer time. Beer time, the backyard. The backyard was always beer time. Always a buddy, a brother-in-law, a sister-in-law, some gaggle of children or another. Well, they weren't always drinking beer, but some of us were. Whether they were cleaning gutters, repairing leaky roofs, putting up a fence, we kids were always helping also. Sometimes we were the beer fetchers. We'd hear the call and race to the basement fridge, which was often chock full of OV, Old Vienna. We'd grab a couple, use the opener on the side of the fridge, and sneak a sip or two, giggling all the while. Beer tax. We share. I don't know if they ever noticed, but if they did, they were okay with their delivery tax. Refurbishing and rebuilding was definitely one of his passions, and at one point he found himself with a Volkswagen Bug. It seemed like it took him years to accomplish like his task, but he entirely took that Bug apart, body and all, and then put it all back together again. He had hung plastic all around the inside of our garage so he could use heaters, and he could go out there in the evenings and the weekends, and like all through the winter he was working on this Volkswagen Bug. I would follow him in there from time to time and try to help by passing tools. I still don't know all the names. There's Star and Big Star, and squares are Robertsons, just like the marmalade. Flatties are just flat. Do you know if you need a bigger or smaller dad? He painted that VW Bug deep green and was so happy with it and himself. He drove it like the race car it was. That bubbly hum was music to his ears, which was necessary because the radio did not work. After snowfalls, he'd take us for like a rip. He'd be doing donuts down Grosvenor. It was epic, and I loved it. After the Bug was the bus. He got a Volkswagen bus. He put a hitch on it and towed our little blue Silverliner pop-up camper. He had it retrofitted with 2 top bunk hammocks because it was a 2-bed situation and there was 5 of us. We all got to sleep in there together. We were all protected and warm. Only a few times did we burn holes in our sleeping bags from the heater. We're lucky like that. We brought it all the way out to Russian River once. We were there early to get set up and get the lay of the land. The St. John Brebeuf group campers had rented a full bay that year. We were expecting more than 20 families. But that first night it stormed. Crazy wind pushing in all the sides of the little tiny baby pup tent I was in. Driving, rain, walloping. The lightning was strobe lights, and the thunder never took a break. Dad threw on his raincoat and came to check on me. He said he could see me using my flashlight looking for leaks in my pup tent. I was warm and dry, but I asked how everyone else was doing. He said there was a crack in the windshield, but nothing to worry about. The next day, there was half a tree sitting in the driver's seat. And I'll tell you, like, the driver's seat that my dad would often sit in. He would maybe not be able to sleep, or I don't know what he was doing, but he'd sit in there and like listen to CBC radio. So much CBC.
We should have it on right now.
We should have it on right now. It'd take them 4 hours to tell us one story. Sorry, lost my spot. The next day, there was a full tree sitting in the driver's seat. So thank goodness he wasn't sitting there. It went right through the windshield, and there was just, it was one of those crazy mornings in a campground after a nutty storm, and everybody crawls out of wherever they were and shares a nutty story about how they managed to survive the night. It was just chainsaws all day that next day. And the parkies were all out. They're making room for more campers. We ended up at Rushing River. Our family ended up at Rushing River for an extra week while we waited to get the van back. If the park police even moved us once to a different campsite because someone had reserved ours.
Our campsite.
Your campsite, that's right.
Yeah.
Roommate. It's the big stuff and the small stuff too. But my dad did a lot of big stuff, or at least it always seemed really big to me. From standing outside while he watched my ringette games on an outdoor ice rink in -30, standing at the side in a full zip-up parka, always waving. Another experience, we all went on a wonderful bicycle trip. We rode our bicycles from Jasper to Banff. We stopped a few times in between, yeah. But my one uncle's van had broken down, so we just had my dad's vehicle. And he drove back and forth, made sure everybody was safe and happy, had water, and he would often move ahead and drop off all of our bags. It was like having a full-on porter. He found me once standing on my fantastic red Napoleon Dynamite 10-speed while I was trying to ascend the most incredible mountain. All the roads for the vehicles were switchback. He was just like, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, gonna get to the top. And he was like, good show. I'd have carried my bike if I had had to, but switchbacking on the switchbacks helped. And wow, like him driving by with a big thumbs up, like gave me the power to make it through. The wonderful thing about a pelican is that its bill can hold more than its belly can. And I'm pretty sure he made it up, but now it looks like maybe not. Maybe he just knew that, and it was like fantastic. His spirit has moved on from his body and will ever, forever live in our hearts. His love will endure. Thank you for gifting us so many memories, Dad. We are forever connected because of you. Part of my thoughts and my heart forever. Dad, Grandpa, Bacadon, brother, uncle, friend, we honor you, we see you, we love you, and we let you go. Be at peaceful rest. Be free from earthly gravity and be reunited with your love for eternity.
I'd like to share a few messages of condolence from people who were not able to be here today. Our Irish cousin Anne O'Sullivan and her sisters Maria and Cora said, I am very sorry to hear of Donald's death. I met him when Patty and he stayed with Auntie Una before they left for Canada. I remember him as being the quiet one. Really? I was a little surprised when I read that. Things change when you grow up, I guess. Our cousin Jacinta McLaughlin wrote, it is very sad to hear of Donald's passing. It is consoling that despite the many challenges thrown at him, his strong spirit helped him to cope with all of them. I have memories of Donald and Patty when they lived with us in Millbrook for a while. The strongest memory was of the time they went on a school tour to Dublin, which included a visit to the Dublin Zoo. For some unknown reason, Donald decided to climb into the flamingo enclosure and was attacked by one of the birds. The result was that he arrived back to Killashandra with a cut on his face. The bus was also many hours late getting back to Killashandra, though that was not necessarily Donald's fault. So my parents were very worried that something awful had happened to them. I was too young to go on the trip, so I heard the story from my parents afterwards. There was also the time that someone from town phoned my mother to tell her that Donald and Patty were out in the middle of one of the lakes near town on a homemade raft. Thankfully, they made it back to land safely. I don't think my mother was equipped to look after adventurous boys. Aunt Una was just such a wonderful person. She was always dressed beautifully and was very genteel, a really special lady. So I can just imagine these two boys landing in their house and her having to deal with them. Al Bannister, who knew Don well at Sunflower Resort in Arizona, wrote, sad to hear he was the last of my golfing partners. Great picture and beautiful description of his personality. I remember having many enjoyable discussions in his dinette over a few beers or his wine. He has been missed since he couldn't come back to Sunflower and will continue to be. My condolence to Mags and the rest of the family. Don did love boating. When he was quite young, he bought a very solid, heavy wooden boat, docked it at the Red Boyne Yacht Club, and explored the river whenever he could. I can still picture him in his captain's hat, merrily going off down the river. On one adventure, he and Patty traveled the river from the Cornish Library all the way to Selkirk, which took them most of the day, and I'm pretty sure they didn't tell anyone they were going. They loved every minute of it. Next on our agenda is Donald's eldest brother, I guess also my eldest brother, and Patty's eldest brother, Jim Gannon, to share a few memories. Apparently we're hugging.
Well, my brother loved to party, and he would have loved this one.
You gotta be right in the microphone.
Did you hear me? He would have loved this one.
Indeed.
I'm probably the only person in this room that actually has known him his whole life.
Yes.
He was born just 15 months after me, followed later by Patty and Katrina. Unlike me back then, I was quite sickly. He could run like the wind. He was very athletic. The man you saw, sometimes he fell off a tractor. You know, there's a common theme to these stories. There's a lot of accidents and incidents that occur. But he woke up always saying, when he got back up, he said, "It's no big deal."
Yeah.
That's also a common theme that you hear. When we were about 8 or so, he suggested we try smoking. After all, back then, all the adults smoked, so why not us? It was easy to get a hold of the cigarettes because they were lying around the house, but we had a devil of a time lighting one. After much trial and error, we sucked in the smoke and spluttered and coughed and said, "My goodness, why would anybody want to do this?" So we put it off until we were about 10. We moved on to something a great deal more interesting: exhaust fumes. Getting high on them. And then we discovered that rather than running after a car like a dog, we could actually sniff gasoline directly from the tank. It was magical. We would lie on our backs watching the clouds, wage wars, or whatever it is that we had. We couldn't wait to get out and play in the fields. Our parents thought, "Boy, those two really love the outdoors." Challenging and bending the rules was an intrinsic part of his nature, an anti-authoritarian strike that led him not to trust any bureaucracy. And I thought that was interesting since both he and Patty and I all worked in them. He said to know them was not to trust them, particularly their doing right by the little guy. So that was one of the reasons that he became a champion for the underdog, for a person without a voice. And he worked tirelessly on their behalf, as indeed our father did in an earlier time. He had a wicked sense of humor and very quick. Shortly after Aunt Catherine died, he visited us in Toronto. We had a golf game. At the end of her game, an older Irish lady greeted him rather undiplomatically, asking, "Are you the brother who lost his wife?" Right away, he said, without missing a beat, although I just did, he responded, "I haven't lost her. I know exactly where she is." On a road trip to Mexico, we ordered Juveos Rancheros. Probably don't have it right. Okay, Halton, thanks very much. It had almost raw eggs on top. Donald thought it was very nice of him in Mexico to show us that we're using real eggs. He nodded approvingly before suggesting to go back and cook them. A lot of things came hard for my brother, and you've heard many stories about them, including the car accident that resulted in the seizures. And it was difficult initially to try and find meds that would control them. One that did caused his teeth to soften and loosen in his gums. And when he went off it, the seizures returned. But anyway, they eventually got it right. But from that moment on, from the moment that he was about 17 or 18, he did live, unfortunately, with health issues. And you heard that they grew cumulatively through his life. But did he ever complain about them? You've heard from his children who said he never did. There was always a question of, in my case, he would say, "Hey, Jim," after telling me something horrible, he'd say, "It's no big deal." And he'd carry on. It didn't stop him from dating Anne Catherine, whom I recall, yeah, it could stop a lot of people from doing a lot of things. And I recall Anne Catherine as really being his first and only love. We knew he was getting ready to go out in our 2-story bungalow when the smell of brute, which he liberally applied, became so pervasive it preceded him down the stairs. The two of them were close from the get-go, and I mean close. They were about the same height. And if you followed their car, which back then had front bench seats, they were sat so closely together, you would swear you were looking at one head, not two. It didn't stop him from getting married and raising 3 wonderful children. It didn't stop him from getting a university degree, which he did the hard way, at night school, full-time job, and raising a young family. It didn't stop him from taking on construction projects of all kinds, and you've heard enough about those, and actually there's some wonderful stories. Most of the mishaps and accidents, you've only heard a fraction of them, and we don't have time to tell you the others. He was great at stretching a dollar, which made it interesting when we went out for lunch or dinner. He rarely picked up the tab. His first request when we had lunch was, of the waiter, always black coffee, hot, and lots of it. And the second was always the same also, hamburger and fries. When offered vegetables or a salad, he quickly squashed the thought. Most of the time, Donald looked quite serious, which together with his white beard led one of my pals down in Arizona to refer to him as Father Time. And that actually stuck with him down there. And he could be intimidating too, if you got on his wrong side, which sometimes seemed quite easy to do since you never knew exactly where that was. One thing for sure, the camera loved him, and his otherwise serious face, which could be quite intimidating, when he smiled, which he would for the camera, if not for sometimes me, when he smiled, it lit up a room. Despite suffering with a variety of painful health issues, he never wavered in treating them as no big deal. Of course there were big deals, particularly as they multiplied toward the end, and you've heard what that was like for the people, his kids taking care of him, but he made sure too that he was also taking care of you. When her mother collapsed and died during dinner at Donald's many, many years ago, she was in her early 50s, like our father. Our genes did not bode well for the 4 of us, which was perhaps one reason that any time we got together, Katrina made sure there was a picture of the 4 of us. In the past couple of weeks, as Jennifer said, Donald has been going through photos with her, and he shared some of them over our weekly Zoom calls. And he was more animated than I've ever seen him in quite some time. I doubt that he cared very much about what he would take from here to the assisted living place that he was moving to, other than his photos, which stimulated his memory, and his coffee cup. At our graveside last Friday, we were asked to describe him in one word or two. Responses included, and they're overlapping with what you heard earlier, stubborn, persistent, loyal, kind, courageous, family first, great dinners, family gatherings, fun. But words mentioned more than once were forgiving and loving. He didn't carry a grudge, had no time or energy for it, and was always there with a hug and a grin. If that's the only lesson we take from his life, it's a good one. Moment. Please do. Just close your eyes and take a moment. You can almost see them excitedly greeting each other in their bickering mixture of grunts and groans with the odd bark and coo mixed in, a language utterly unintelligible to anyone but them. And as they come together, just like in that car so many years ago, it is hard to tell. Are we looking at one head or two? Thank you.
I didn't intentionally skip you, Caitlin. I got carried away and went to the next page. I'm going to just ask you if you're okay to come up, Caitlin, and share your memories. Gee, you could have brought the baby here.
Leave it to Jim to make us all cry. I was doing so good until now, and now I have to be up here, so thanks. Oh, hold on, sorry. Don't need to give you guys a show. So, is that better? Yeah, there we go. So the majority of you knew a man named Don, dad, brother, uncle, or friend. I knew a man called Grandpa. We had a very different relationship from the common granddad to daughter experience because I lived with him for 16 years. He was more than a grandpa. He was my protector and sounding board. He took the pedals off my bike and taught me to ride. He took me out and taught me to drive. He took me to the hardware store and taught me how to use tools. And after a long day, he was always there to ask me about school. I remember one night he was saying goodnight, and for the first time in a long time, I asked him to scratch my back. I was 12, and we'd stopped doing bedtime many moons before, but we needed each other, more than usual, because the love of his life had passed away suddenly. And when she died, everything changed. He changed, but he never lost his gentle touch, and that night as he kissed me goodnight, he said something I'll never forget. It's you and me against the world. It felt so powerful and so meaningful. He really meant it. And now I have children of my own who need someone to take on life head first. And I found another protector in another Lord of the Rings fan. Yes, we spent many weekends watching the LOTR trilogy. And wouldn't you know it, I married a man equally obsessed. Some people joke that they've married their mother. I married my grandpa. The day after he passed, hi baby, Chase put on the Fellowship of the Ring and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I felt so comforted by this dang movie. Maybe that's the Hobbit in us. Maybe it's the Hobbit in us, because he was always food focused. 11Z's luncheon, dinner, heard of it? He taught me so much in the kitchen. I've impressed chefs with my knife skills and have also adopted his love of cooking, which bodes well for us because I find myself cooking 3 meals a day these days. He was always experimenting with different flavors and testing the limits of his spice tolerance or the tolerance of others, and he was always up for a good laugh. His door was always unlocked, as you're aware, and his home was always open. Many of you were adopted by him, sharing fond memories, holidays, meals, and laughs. He always had room for one more at the table and would often ask us to invite our friends over, and I'll fondly remember the parties, holiday gatherings, and hot tub shenanigans that took place at 283. This man was able to see past himself and be supportive in a way I will spend my life emulating. When I was a teenager, I had a blue and purple mohawk. I listened to metal loud in his house, and he never said a thing, at least not to me. He didn't shy away from taking me out. He was happy to show me off, and he never stopped being proud of me. I think deep down he respected me even more for living like I didn't care what others thought of me. When I told him our plans to head down south, he said, "I'll miss you, but I understand. You only have this life, and I hope you love it." He was a man of many talents, but the most important was the way he loved. It was everything. He was always reliable, only ever a call away. He never wanted to talk about himself, though. He always wanted to listen. If he became the topic of conversation, he would quickly change the focus to anything else, which is kind of ironic because he would have absolutely loved this. Everyone drinking whiskey and wine and coffee, are you kidding me? This is his bread and butter. He will be missed, but he is here. I see him in my kids and in all of you. His love has touched us all. And for my grandma, really, Dawn?
Well, I was sure glad at one time that Don decided to go and find out a little bit about the culinary arts. The year before, in order to borrow the car, my mom asked him and made him make lunches for everyone. And every day in my lunch was a banana and 2 pieces of buttered bread for a whole year. He did make lunch, we couldn't complain, but boy, that was a long year. The next year, he went to culinary art school, and he learned how to make the best egg salad sandwiches I have ever or will ever taste. So I was really glad he hit the culinary arts area. Now I'd like to call on Rosemary and Tony to come and say a few words. It's clean as we're leaving it out now in case you need it. Speak right into the microphone.
Okay.
Fingers first.
While I just go and stand here to say. What a distinguished audience. It's just incredible, and we also feel really honored that we, as I think outsiders, to have been asked to talk. For any one of you who do not know me, my name is Tony Van Roosmalen, the brother to Dawn. I'm married to the sister of Dawn's late wife, Anne Catherine. We've been married 53 years, raised 6 wonderful children, each married now to awesome partners, and so far we have 3 beautiful grandchildren and expecting a 4th this summer. Our immediate family counts 17 in total. Now I'm sure you're probably thinking, what has that got to do with Dawn? Why are you telling us this? Well, Dawn and Catherine have a lot to do with this. When I think of Dawn, I can't help it. I have to think of Catherine. To me, they were inseparable. I arrived in Winnipeg just after the first Pan Am game in 1967. I was introduced to St. Mary's CYO the second week that I came in Winnipeg. And CYO was a Catholic youth organization which had their club rooms in the old St. Mary's School across from St. Mary's Church, where now the Delta Hotel stands. And CYO organized many things, but the key one was a dance every Sunday night. And it attracted a lot of singles between 18 and 30. On that first evening that I met Don and Catherine, they immediately took me under their wings and drove me home even that evening in Don's mustard-colored Vauxhall car. In North Kildone, that's where I found a boarding place. One of the characteristics of Don and Catherine was their unfailing concern for others and help them where they could. Seems like a repeating theme. They were incredibly hospitable and generous, a trait they both held to the end. Now back to my first encounter with Don and Catherine. They must have felt sorry for this lonely Dutch boy and invited me for dinner to Catherine's home for dinner the next Sunday. And that's where I met Rosemary. And the rest, you might say, is history. Don and Catherine became close friends before and after they were married. Not a week would go by that either we were at their place or they were at ours. And one interesting incident, and I'm not sure of that link to the one that you talked about, was that Don was asked to be the godparent of one of our children. And the baptism was on a Sunday afternoon. And time was getting on, and no sight of Don, or in Catherine for that matter, which was really odd for us because they were very predictable. And this, of course, was all way before cell phones. So luckily, Rosemary's mother stepped in on behalf of Don when the service started. And it was only later that we learned that Don had fallen off the roof of the garage and broken his arm while trying to trim a tree. Now, I'm not sure that's the same incident or not, but leave it be. Did I mention that Don and Catherine are very caring people, always concerned about others? Well, on one occasion that I remember, Don and Catherine had took into their home a young teenage girl whose dad was in jail, only because he had killed his wife. I can't remember the circumstances surrounding the daughter staying at Don and Catherine, except to say their concern for others was just paramount. And with them, they always went to great length to help out. Now, I could go on Don and Catherine's generosity and care for others, except to say it had no boundaries, and no doubt they are receiving the just reward in heaven today. In closing, I would sum up Don's life as a great one. They raised they raised a beautiful family, including 5 beautiful grandchildren and 2 beautiful great-grandchildren. So I would say Don lived a life well.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Van Rossmullen, other half of Tony. And Catherine was my sister, Don's deceased wife. Firstly, I want to convey the regrets of my brother Lawrence, Don's other brother-in-law, Trudeau, and his wife Diane, who both have a bad case of COVID. So they can't be here. We didn't want them here. I also bring the regrets from my older brother, Ted Trudeau, and his wife, Brenda, who live in Millet, Alberta, who couldn't be here either due to health issues. But they wanted me to convey their deepest sympathies for everybody. And they said Don was their friend for a long time, and he was more like a brother than a brother-in-law. He was a brother. So that's from Lawrence and Ted both that expressed that. Don, dear Don. My favorite brother-in-law, my very special and true friend, my sister's lover and soulmate, and one heck of a great guy. Our friendship goes back to roughly 1966. About that time, I think it was, when Don started dating my sister and Catherine, so he'd be at our house regularly. And Catherine and Don met through St. Mary's Catholic Youth Organization, CYO, and they were the movers and shakers. They got things going and running for that organization. Once my husband Tony was on the scene, we double dated on a lot of occasions. Sadie Hawkins, we got some pictures of those, which were kind of funny now when I look back. But New Year's, parties, bowling, you name it, we double dated a lot. When Don would drive my sister home after an evening out, he'd park on the street in front of our house to say goodnight. Necking, my brother called it. Ted would go and grab our spotlight that went with a video camera and go and shine it on Don's car. This lit up the whole street. Curtains would come over for people looking out to see what was going on. So after this happened a few times, Don got wise and parked a block away. I also recall Don's little mustard colored car with a trailer hitch that was pulling his boat behind it. A group of us from CYO would go out camping on many occasions, and Don would pull his boat out there and have it, and offer a lot of fun for very generously offering rides to everybody who wanted to go, or dared to go. After Catherine and Don and Tony and I were married, we often went camping together, and that was all intense. Then they had kids, we had kids. We progressed to trailers, but went on many camping trips together. And I'm sure you kids remember a lot of those weekends, especially Hecla Island, Sioux Narrows, Rushing River, to name a few. Don could always work that little camp stove of his so well. He was always designated as chief cook. Chef, I should say. The official chef. We have many great memories of our time spent together enjoying nature, or I should say sometimes surviving rain, mosquitoes, or terrible campsites. Don and Ann Catherine, as partners, were host and hostess supreme. Also mentioned before. They loved entertaining and putting on a delicious spread for all to enjoy. Don's flaming plum pudding, mentioned before, was always the highlight. And this was especially for all the kids who would gather around with their oohs and their ahs at this flaming cake. Now it was more for this colorful flame on this plate than for the culinary aspects of it. They didn't usually imply. But this flaming extravaganza often progressed from cake to tablecloth to Don's arm to the floor, wherever this flaming brandy spilled. And that was much to the admiring delight of all the crowd, or to their horror. Don was sensitive, generous, a great host, and a stubborn arguer, just for the sake of argument sometimes. I've heard this worded differently, but whatever way you say it, he truly enjoyed debating on many and various topics, and actually had a great wealth of knowledge to go along with it. I chatted with Don a couple of days before he passed, and he shared with me very positively about his upcoming move to the Shaftesbury. He was so very upbeat, and I guess that was mentioned by Jennifer too. He was so very upbeat about it and expressing all the reasons why he was looking forward to this move. I said to him, I guess the only hard part was leaving all the good friends that he had made here at Fred Douglas. And he said, yeah, but he said there are friends everywhere. And he added, there's telephones for visiting. And that says very much to me about Don's very positive way of looking at life in general. He could always see the good, and that was such a great attitude. I told Don that I'd be his first visitor to share lunch with him over at the Shaftesbury, which was within walking distance from our place where we live. So I guess that's going to have to be after we're both in the place where Don is that we'll share that lunch, and he'd better have something ready for me. Meanwhile, Don, enjoy the heavenly banquet prepared for you with Aunt Catherine at your side. Sorry. I thank God for the gift of Don's life. His time on this earth enriched all of us who knew him. His love, which touched so many of us here and many others, was a true sign of God's love for each one of us. I believe that Don is now in perfect happiness, surrounded by love, with Aunt Catherine at his side. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary and Tony. Recently, my son asked me if Don even knew how to swim. He had never seen him in the water, never imagined that he could even swim. Yes, he did. And he even helped me learn by throwing me in the deep water at Falcon Lake. There were many water-based fights, just like we see our nieces, nephews, children, and grandchildren, pushing each other off the raft, trying to get on the raft, etc. We had a whole ton of fun while we were at the lake, and by the end of that summer, I had learned how to swim. Tough love, I guess. Don often wore a gift from Aunt Catherine. It was a t-shirt that read, "You can tell an Irishman, but you can't tell him much." I'd like you to please join me in singing one chorus of When Irish Eyes Are Smiling. When Irish eyes are smiling, sure 'tis like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. And when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they'll steal your heart away. Donal had a quick and sometimes acerbic wit, a heart full of love, and always a twinkle in his eye. He worked hard in life and faced his health challenges head on. He laughed with great gusto, lit up a room with his smile, and enjoyed a special relationship with each and every one of his relatives and his friends. Please stand if you are able. And raise your glass to Donald Patrick Gannon. To Donald. To Donald. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of the helpers who set up, prepared tables, arranged the live stream, and helped in any other way. What they all need now is for us to get up, move around a little bit, mingle, and allow them to move anything that needs to be moved so that we can share some refreshments. Our celebration of Dawn will continue through our sharing of stories. Thank you all for coming and making this celebration so special.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, well, there you go.
So I haven't lost the taste.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we can move it out.
That's very discerning.
No, well,
Maybe not
yeah.
no,
That's Scotch.
Sean and I had, I don't know, it wasn't a very long conversation. We narrowed it down quick.